All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Regulated Industry Committee of the House is now in session. I want to welcome everybody here today. We have a few bills and a few propositions to hear. One of those, I think they handled it in the last committee meeting about cameras in nursing homes, so we don't have to deal with that one. But that might make some of you feel pretty warm and fuzzy, because I look out there and I see some aged faces. All right, first up, Mr. Washburn, House Bill 486, and you'd be working from a committee substitute, is that correct? That is correct, Mr. Chairman. 3948S. Have at it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I'm here to present House Bill 486, or the substitute for that. This deals with electricians and plumbers. It's a very simple bill. There are three sections to the change. One has to do with continuing education for the electricians. And basically, it does change some language there. It allows them to hold courses with or outside the state, and gives certainly reasonable time limits for getting approval of those courses, and of course provides that the fees for the courses have to pay for the courses. The second item is about electrical contractors. Basically states that if an individual is not licensed or does not have a certificate of competency, they are not allowed to advertise to do electrical work. So simply stated, if you don't have a license, you can't advertise that you do. And the third section is about plumbers, similar to that about licensing for electricians. It says a person who does not have a valid license from the Division of Master Plumbers and Journeyman Plumbers shall be prohibited from advertising in any manner that such person is in the business or profession of plumbing, unless such person is licensed by the Division of Master Plumbers and Journeyman Plumbers. I believe this is a good bill. I think it protects the public. And simply, again, some language about CE for electricians. But the second and third part, you can't advertise to do electrical work if you're not licensed to do so, and you can't advertise to do plumbing work if you're not a licensed plumber, a master or a journeyman. And with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Very good. Questions from any of the committee members? Let's start down there with Mr. Martin.
Thank you. Representative, I just wanted to follow up, and you have, to our quick discussion beforehand, my original concern was on the first section of the proposition that struck through the language of where these courses could come from, specifically the Technical College System of Georgia. And you have assured me, and the gentleman representing the board has as well, that we're not pointing this education toward a particular source. My interest is that it be available wide, and I think your representation and that of the other gentleman was by so doing, by making these changes, that the training should be easier to come by in all areas of the state. So if you could just affirm that for us on the record here, and also affirm if the gentleman from the board would make sure that the Technical College System of Georgia would be apprised of anything they need to do, because I would certainly hope they would be one of the groups that could provide some of this ongoing education, given their proclivity to provide good training otherwise.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, thank you for that question. And I believe that is the case, that the language here says the division may contract with institutions of higher learning, which would cover those folks, professional organizations, or other qualified persons to provide programs that meet the requirements of this paragraph and any rules or regulations established by the division. And then, of course, the programs will be self-sustaining. So I don't think there's no attempt to remove the training from the folks you're talking about, as far as our technical schools, et cetera. They're certainly in the mix, and they would still send things to them. They just have the ability to control the quality of the courses and be sure they're what they're supposed to be.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for this legislation. Just a quick question. In both of these, you say advertising. Do you think we need to define what that is? When does somebody move into the advertising world? If that means they print a business card and give it out to their friend, is that advertising? Is it a billboard? Is it, of course, radio and television is easy to identify, but at some point, somebody just out there talking is advertising or marketing themselves. I mean, you understand what I'm getting at. It's a little vague on what constitutes it.
I understand. In my mind, if you promote yourself to offer that service for pay, then you would be advertising, whether it be word of mouth or anything else. Obviously, something verbal that's not in writing that somebody can show to somebody and prove might be a little difficult to prove. But I see it as mostly written and on the internet, you know, advertising. I'm a plumber or doing plumbing work, or certainly to advertise that you're a licensed plumber if you're not would be a violation.
Fair enough.
All right. Do we have any other questions from any of the committee members? Number 27. Yes, sir, Mr. Williamson.
So, to the author of the bill, just a quick question. You sort of piqued my curiosity here. When you say plumbing, maintenance people all the time are going to unstop a toilet. You don't consider that plumbing, do you?
Well, I don't know about the definition of plumbing. I know, let's see, I believe it's hot's on the left, cold on the right, and wastewater flows downhill is the basic rules of plumbing. But that's a good question, and I thought about that when we were working on this bill a little bit, that certainly maintenance people that are not plumbers, not licensed plumbers, might get called to go by and unstop a commode or something like that. I think this deals with advertising and promoting yourself as a licensed plumber or electrician when you're not.
Now, if we're going to limit it to licensed plumber, I'm 100% on board, but a follow-up question would be, some of these same maintenance people will adjust the toilet apparatus to make sure the water level's working correctly and change the little flapper things. It doesn't take a great degree of skill or training to do things like that. Is that going to be excluded from them advertising their handyman services to address apartment maintenance needs? Or
Well, it's a very good question, and you make a valid point. Certainly minor plumbing repairs are done every day by folks that are maintenance people. But again, the language is that they couldn't advertise they're a licensed plumber or electrician. This bill would prohibit them from advertising that they are.
it says advertising in any manner.
Do we know anybody that advertises themselves as a plumber to change the flapper or put a washer in?
Well, I know that the handyman will advertise the fact they'll keep your toilets working properly. They're not changing them out necessarily, but they're going to be adjusting the flapper thing and the water control device and things of that. Is that a technical term, a flapper thing?
My assumption is no big-time plumbers or people that earn significant money in the plumbing business would spend too much time worrying about the folks that change flappers and pursuing them from advertising falsely because of that, but that's a personal assumption.
All right. Back to Mr. Martin.
Mr. Chairman, I just wondered if someone is here with the Division of Electrical Contractors or the Division of Master Plumbers, if they could tell us if there's a specific title. Is that what one does if one is a plumber? I mean, is there, if so, then maybe the change would be that, you know, the manner from advertising in a manner that such person is a, you know, master plumber. Maybe that's what the attorney's going there, as opposed to plain meaning of the words business or profession of plumbing. I think you're right. You don't want to throw the handyman.
If y'all good, council has got some definitions of plumbing. in the code, and I'm going to let her read this to y'all.
Gentleman says there's a difference between a plumber and
Thank
a
you,
flat
Sean
protector.
Marie. Which number are you over there, dear? Thank you.
14, I think.
Yes.
So it's quite a long definition, but plumbing is defined for this part of the code. So bear with me. Plumbing means the practice of installing, maintaining, altering, or repairing piping fixtures, appliances, and appurtenances in connection with sanitary drainage or storm drainage facilities, venting systems, medical gas piping systems, natural gas piping systems on the outlet side of gas meters, or public or private water supply systems within or adjacent to any building, structure, or conveyance, provided, however, that after July 1, 1997, only master plumbers and journeyman plumbers who have been certified by the Division of Master Plumbers and Journeyman Plumbers to perform such tasks shall be authorized to install, maintain, alter, or repair medical gas piping systems. The term plumbing also includes the practice of and materials used in installing, maintaining, extending, or altering the natural gas, stormwater, sewage, and water supply systems of any premises to their connection with any point of public disposal or other acceptable terminal, provided, however, the licensure under this chapter shall not be required for a contractor certified by the Department of Public Health to make the connection to any on-site wastewater management system from the stub out exiting the structure to an on-site wastewater management system. Notwithstanding any other provision in this chapter, any person who holds a valid master plumbing license or a company which holds a valid utility contractor license shall be qualified to construct, alter, or repair any plumbing system which extends from the property line up to but not within 5 feet of any building, structure, or conveyance, regardless of the cost or depth of any such plumbing system.
Can you read that again?
All right.
Now,
Oh, yeah. Like the third sentence.
Mr. Chairman, isn't the key here what you just read about gas lines, when we start thinking about installation of gas lines and somebody advertising that they know what they're doing if they're not certified, not licensed, and that gas leak occurs tonight and kills somebody and their 3 kids? Isn't that what we're trying to prevent?
That's
As
exactly
well
right.
as on the electrical side, somebody that doesn't know what they're doing about wiring, advertising themselves as being an electrician when they're not licensed, and burning up a man and a woman and his 3 kids one night. That's what we're trying to prevent here, I believe.
I think you're right. Mr. Kirby again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to our, the finest legislative council in the building, we want, as I read this, just paragraph in section 2 with the small a, small b, those 2 sections then 1 and 2 are tied together and not independent of each other, and the same 1, 2, and 3 for B, that they're all tied together is the way the code's written, or can they be standalone?
they're actually,
They're both.
so they're standalone in that we could put them anywhere else in the code. In fact, there are other provisions within that same chapter, because this chapter deals with electrical, plumbing, conditioned air contracting businesses. And there are other provisions that not only deal with advertising, but also deal with, that deal with advertising elsewhere. So you could move these elsewhere, but the reason why they're grouped together here is because A1 and 2 have to do with electrical contracting, and B1, 2, and 3 have to do with plumbers. And then, much to your question earlier about advertising, elsewhere in that chapter, it does specify, but would not relate to these particular paragraphs unless you added it here. But elsewhere in that same chapter, it specifies that advertising under this subsection, in that case, includes but is not limited to newspaper, television, or radio advertisements, telephone directory listings, mailings, business cards, or a sign or signs at a place of business or attached to a vehicle. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right. This would be Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My father was actually a plumber and was president of the association, and it was on the board back '60s, I guess. And I just have a hard time imagining that that board or that association, a sheriff or even a judge, would listen to a case of brought against a flapper. Someone's repairing a flapper. I mean, I appreciate the concern, but I think the essence of the bill here is really what you're talking about gas, medical gas, and gas of that nature. So I think the flappers will be okay with this.
That speaks well to know that your daddy was a plumber and you're a dentist. You ever thought you might should have followed him in his profession?
Actually, yeah.
All right. Mr. Caldwell, I believe.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative, for bringing the bill. I share some of these concerns. I think that if I'm reading here lines 49 and then line 52 correctly, currently we prohibit no person shall engage in the business of plumbing as a master plumber, and then no person shall engage in the business of plumbing as a journeyman plumber unless they have the relevant license. Now I like Sean Marie's story far too much to ask her to read any portion of that code section again. But what I understood from what she had read there, we currently allow for people who do not hold one of those two licenses to engage in the business of plumbing. I think that to the point you're trying to drive at, making sure that we have a standard by which you can measure within that advertisement, we're cleaner if we read this out to say, rather than shall be prohibited from advertising in any manner that such person is in the business or profession of plumbing, that if we read it something like prohibited from advertising in any manner that such person is a master plumber or a journeyman plumber. Because what we're trying to do is develop a baseline standard. If we currently permit others to engage in plumbing, though, I think we walk a dangerous line to tell them you can do the business, you just can't talk about it. Well, I guess I'm kind of in a mode of let's either get after it or not. If we're after getting everyone other than master and journeyman plumbers out of the business of plumbing, let's do that, or let's allow for people that we allow to engage in the business to advertise it. Does that concern make sense to anybody else on the committee?
You know, I'm not quite sure. Y'all got me thoroughly turned around, and I'm not a plumber nor am I a dentist. But the way I'm reading this, this is sort of like has been the same, the direction that past sessions of the General Assembly has gone. That we know that you can't stop somebody that's a handyman. Handyman will change a light socket. Handyman will fix a flapper on that proverbial commode that Mr. Williams was so concerned about. This is saying that if you don't hold a specific licensure for that, then you can't advertise it. You don't want the handyman out there saying, I'm an electrician, I'm an HVAC man, I'm this and that, unless they have a license. And this is saying, quite frankly, that you can't advertise. And the advertising goes in a lot of ways. Yes, it's advertising in a newspaper. Used to be yellow pages, but there ain't no yellow pages anymore. Business cards. If he's got a business card, he says, I'm a handyman. We don't deal with handyman. We deal with licensed professionals. So he can't put that he is a licensed professional. He can't say that I'm an expert in electrical issues or HVAC or plumbing. So, I mean, as I'm reading it, it looks to me like that's pretty fair language to get to it. But I'm not, I'm just one of the votes on this committee. Mr. Caldwell, are you finished?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Martin, one more time.
Well, yeah, let's just, I agree with the chair. I think the issue is that what the bill says is advertise in any manner that such person is in the business or profession of plumbing. I would suggest, and I'm looking at our learned attorney over there, business as defined or as described in paragraph 1 and 2 above. I mean, basically, if you're not a master plumber, you can't advertise you are one. If you're not a journeyman plumber, you can't advertise one. Is that not what we're trying to get at?
No, sir, I think what we're trying to get at is somebody that knows very little about the plumbing business can't go hire a very good website developer to develop a big website that says AAA Plumbing Company and start engaging people and doing work for them when he's not licensed and not experienced. I think that's what we're trying to prevent here, is people
think
holding
you're
themselves
exactly
out to
right.
do something they don't know how to do and serving the public poorly in the process. That's my opinion about what we were trying to do.
All right.
I mean, that's already in the code in sections 1 and 2. You shall not engage in the business of plumbing. Now you're just trying to stop them from advertising.
All right. Mr. Carpenter.
So as I read the bill, there's nothing in this bill that says a handyman can't advertise that I'm a handyman and I can work on all kinds of things. It's just literally specific to the industry, electric plumbing.
That's exactly
I think the
how I
intent
read it.
is to keep people who are not licensed from advertising and holding out that they are, or at least by insinuation or implication that they are.
Exactly.
That's the intent for both electricians and plumbers.
All right, who else? Who have we not heard from? All right, Mr. Kirby, it's a race between you and Mr. Martin.
Well, he said something.
They're calling me to go next door to 403, Mr. Chairman. I'll be right out of your head.
I appreciate your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. I've got some of Kentucky's finest to help get you through the evening, so if you need it, so. To the author of the bill, make sure I understand it. Let's say Tom Kirby Handyman advertises, and I can sweat copper with the best of them, but I have no license. Are you saying I'd be violating something if I, as a handyman, was doing plumbing work and running copper pipes?
The way I read the bill and see the intention of the bill, if you were out advertising with a website, and in the old days, a half-page, yellow page ad, and that said lowest, plumbing repair, lowest prices in town, et cetera, and you didn't have a license to do it, you'd be in violation of this code the code as we're proposing it. That's the way I see it. Again, it is to protect the public
I
from
may be
people who are
wrong,
not
but what-
licensed from advertising and seeking business for something from which they should have a license. I'm a real estate broker. The law would prohibit me from going out and listing your property and trying to sell it without a real estate brokerage license. Similar thing.
Or an agent's license.
Or an agent's license, yes. So,
And I don't know that there's any way possible on the shining sun that we can legislate people from making a livelihood, but what we're saying, and if I understand what I'm reading, is that we're only saying that you can't advertise that you're something that you're not. And in this state, we determine that you are what you are if it's a licensed profession.
and I certainly would not want some little guy out that does small, fixes commodes and does work like that, put out of business. I don't think that's what the intention is. I think it's to keep people from advertising, seeking business for something for which they are not licensed or experienced or capable.
All right. Questions? Anybody else got a question on the committee?
I'm going to take a shot when you're ready to take a motion and see if I can't propose some language.
All right, what's the, we have a motion do pass. Do we have a second? Any discussion?
Chairman, if the chair would allow, I'd like to offer the additional language after the word plumbing on line 57. I would like to add as a master plumber or journeyman plumber. So that the line would then read, person is in the business or profession of plumbing as a master plumber or a journeyman plumber unless such person is licensed by the Division of Master Plumbers and Journeyman Plumbers.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion on the amendment? None, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Any other motions from any of the members? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we pass this forward as a committee substitute, clean as a substitute, including the amendment. We have a motion as a substitute that creates a committee substitute. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it. Thank you, Representative Washburn.
Thank you,
And that
Mr.
was
Chairman.
supposed to be the simple bill today? Huh. All right. All right. House Bill 337. Mr. Blackman, are you still here? That's good. Brett's handling this. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Bring before you, as stated, House Bill 337, LC. Make sure I have you all the right ones. It's 3937 ERS. I think the last few letters there. And it relates to the peer-to-peer car rental programs. It's a kind of a minimal regulatory framework that largely deals with insurance and liability. It's designed to protect the customer, protect our citizens, and I think just, you know, on the surface, everybody's comfortable and or supportive of it in its current form. I'd be happy to dive into some more details or answer any questions, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like.
All right, questions? Come on now. Y'all didn't get wore out on that first one, did you? There's no questions on this?
It's a good bill. Make a motion.
Let me clean my eyes one more time. Is there any questions from any of the committee members? If not, what is the will of the committee?
Make a motion, do fast.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, comments, amendments? Anybody got a concern about how they're gonna advertise? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it. Congratulations.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you very much.
Yes. All right. Is Mr. Smith in here? Since you're a non-committee member and I'm not going to belabor keeping you in here for this misery much longer, why don't you come on up and present your bill? House Bill 493, and I think you're working from...
No, 516.
I'm sorry. 516, and it's a clean bill. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. What this bill is, it adds a designation for structural engineer along with professional engineers to the licensing bill. What it does, when jobs are bid and people are reviewing, clients are reviewing the status of certain companies and where they are, we in Georgia do not designate structural engineers in the category as 24 other states do. So therefore, to put them on sound ground and hopefully keep them in the process, in the bidding process, we'd like to add a structural engineer to that as that designation.
All right. Questions? Number 16. Yes, sir.
Representative Smith, basically what you guys, I think, are saying is that a lot of other states have this, and our people are just not able to compete. It's more of a marketing sort of thing, an advertising sort of thing, I guess you could say. But seriously, it levels the field and it lets our people compete. Probably a very, very good thing.
It shows that we believe that they're very important, like professional engineers, as structural engineers, and then we do have 24 other states that designate them as such, and we'd like to have that designation too.
I think it's a great bill. Mr. Chairman, at the right time, I'll move that we pass it.
Well, it may be the right time after everybody else has their chance to speak. Any other questions, comments from the committee members? I do declare, I think Mr. Martin, Mr. Kirby wore y'all out on that first bill. That all he did, we just put redundant language into licensure. All right. If not, we have a motion. Do we have a second? All right. Do we have any other discussion? No? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All
members of the
right, we
committee.
have in front of us House Bill 493 by committee sub, LC 363952S. And I think that my dear friend, Mr. Harrell, is going to be presenting this because Chairman Tanner had to take a hiatus.
That's right, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This is a substitute. It's LC 363952S, and what I know about the bill is that the author is selling chickens this afternoon and is not present. I know GMA is not opposed to this bill moving forward. I know our engineers and architects are supportive, and what this does is streamlines a permitting process and plan review when they're going through that process with our local governments. It provides the local governments notify them within 5 days if the application is complete. If the application is complete, then they have 30 days to review. If the local government's going to take longer than 30 days, then the applicant can go to an outside third-party professional engineer, professional architect to provide that review. If the local government can't complete it within 30 days, they still pay half the fee to the local government and all the cost of the private review. It also gives them the option, if the local government can do it within that time, and they still want to speed it up even faster than 30 days, to pay the local government 100% of the fee and all the cost of the private review. And then there was also insurance increase requirement. That's about lines 166 and 167. It's agreeable to all parties. And then at the very back of the bill, there's an addition in Section 3 dealing with erosion control, and again, the independent licensed engineers that can provide that plan review as well. We happen to answer any questions.
All right, any questions from any of the committee members? And I want to tell you, as he said to start with, ACCG and GMA didn't have any problems with this bill, so I think y'all need to take a real good look at it, because I would be concerned that it's, if they don't have a concern. Questions from the committee? Everybody feel warm and cuddly? All right. What's the will of this committee? We have a motion do pass, and we have a second. Any further questions? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. And nays? And the ayes clearly have it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell.
Thank you.
Last but not least, speaking of redundancy, we have a bill, House Bill 535. I think we have already seen, haven't we already seen this bill?
Yes, sir.
Is this the microblading bill?
Yes, you have any time.
And is this in the identical language that we passed out earlier?
Identical.
If you give me your number there.
17.
Would you like to say just a word or two of grace over this bill?
Good bill.
All right.
And we have passed it through.
For the committee, this is the identical bill that was passed out of this committee a couple of weeks ago on microblading. That's the tattooing of the eyebrows, and I don't know if it was any other personal areas of the body or not, but it was eyebrows. Mm-hmm. And this is the same bill, but under a different author's name, just in case. I got it. Wait a minute. I got somebody down there. Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, I just want to go on record. I had this bill last year. We ended up having to attach it to a Senate bill, and House overwhelmingly passed it. Does a lot of really good things for people, cancer patients, kids that are born without eyebrows, things like that. And I applaud both Representative Mathiak and Chairman Hawkins for carrying the bill. I'd appreciate your favorable consideration. We're just cleaning it up from things that happened last
We
year.
would have already passed it, but thank you for them comments. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Any further questions, any comments, any amendments? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, and the ayes have it. Ladies and gentlemen, this meeting is now on the verge of being recessed. If any of the committee members, we are having a small social gathering for the benefit of the committee, and that's called a committee dinner. And if y'all have, now I know that a lot of y'all have responded to Jan. If you haven't, and if we haven't heard from you in a day or two, then we're going to take it that if you didn't respond, it's a no. If you said no, then it'll be no. And if you want to respond, please do. That's being said, this meeting is adjourned.